Hey everybody, this is Dr. Russ Jones.
And Brad Kennan.
We are wide open. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like a champion tonight. You know, the question I've got to ask you, the ongoing turmoil, the never-ending saga of the thermal drone and its transit from the People's Republic of China to Columbus, Ohio.
It is still in transit. I was told it was delivered, but it was delivered to the in-states shipping company. And I've been in contact with the China supplier, and they said they have started an inquiry as to where this item is, because they've asked, and it should have been delivered by now, but it is not. So hopefully by the time this airs, I will have my drone.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's a little sketchy, right? Because you don't want to spend $5,000 if you're not going to get your toy.
Sure.
But
I know.
You know what I mean? We also all want to learn how to use them, because next time we're all together, and
Right.
you and I have some things planned with this drone world.
Right. Exactly. And you know, I'll roll a $2,000 dice, and hopefully hopefully I didn't just burn it. You know, hopefully I will get it eventually.
Yeah, your friends are counting on you to figure out the pathway for the solution for us.
Correct. So we're working on different things for the drone. So hopefully we will find a nice piece of thermal footage of a big Sasquatch, and I will sacrifice my drone if it comes to that, and I will fly down and run into it with a thermal.
You're going to crash the the drone with a thermal.
Into the Bigfoot. I will crash into the Bigfoot with my thermal, and then I'll go find my drone, and hopefully in the propellers there is this DNA, hair, or blood, or whatever it is, and the solution, we're done. So game over. We got it on video. We got evidence. We proved it.
Wow. You know, why did we not think of this sooner? Maybe we need a larger drone that could, and you know, do some kind of severe damage.
Now you're
of course, that's big bucks too, right? I mean, we're already talking about.
No, actually, I have seen overseas, you can get the Mavic 3, which is what we ordered.
Yeah.
They actually have a delivery system on them that you can order. So you could actually have a delivery system, push a button, and we could drop a grenade right there on them.
Really?
Not a grenade, but let's say we could drop a grenade if we had one. But we could do something.
Are grenades legal?
I do not think they are.
Okay.
Ukraine, I think they are legal in Ukraine, and I think they're legal in the Mideast at this point.
So if the listeners want to do some research and let us know what we can legally drop that may enable us to
maybe a flashbang.
Some DNA. Pardon me?
How about a flashbang? We could drop a flashbang, you know, like the SWAT teams use. Drop a flashbang on it. We'll stun it, and we'll run in and.
Yeah, I don't know about all that. I mean, you know, some of our friends are running out of the woods. So, you know, what are we supposed to do? Who we were supposed to get? I mean, we have probably 4 of us that would go and say, we just got to take this for the team, for the Bigfoot world. And we're going to rush in.
Sip would take it for the team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he would.
Yeah,
I think so. But, you know, I know you have a guest tonight. I know he was a police officer, so he might know whether or not we're allowed to do a flashbang.
Right. I think he would take it for the team. I think he would take it for the team. We're just going to go ahead and bring Brian on. Brian from Sasquatch Odyssey, and your other, what is the Bigfoot podcast? The Bigfoot podcast, is that what it's called?
That
Bigfoot podcast. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, close enough.
I have a horrible. So anyway, Brian, welcome to the show. We appreciate you coming on. You're one of our sister shows, I do believe.
I am Weird Encounters, man, on Untold Radio.
On the Untold Radio Network. You've been doing this podcast thing for a while. That is, I do believe so. You're in North Carolina, I think.
I am in North Carolina.
Well, what part of North Carolina?
Lenore, North Carolina, near Boone, Appalachian State. If you guys are
okay, I have a project that we're doing in Greenwood, South Carolina. So in order to get home, we go shoot right up 26, hit Asheville, come Knoxville. And in fact, I was in Gatlinburg over the weekend, or Pigeon Forge over the weekend with the family. So
I love Gatlinburg, man. I love the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference. We've done that like the last 3 years. So
when is that?
Usually in July, like mid to late July.
We stayed. I haven't been to Pigeon Forge or that area for a very long time, since I was, probably 20 years. And I don't remember it like it was, because it was nuts, like crazy nuts. So we stayed in Pigeon Forge, maybe a mile off the strip in a cabin like everybody does. And then we drove around. We went to a town called, I think it was Townsend, North or Tennessee. And I was told to go there by a friend of ours. And he's like, oh, it's a cool Bigfoot town. So we go to this town on a Saturday morning and nothing was open. It is November. So this town kind of revolves around the water and tubing and kayaking and things like that. There's a river right there. So I assume there's not a lot of people doing that in November. So therefore, there wasn't a lot to do. So we came back through the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, hit Gatlinburg, which that was eye-opening also, because it's a lot of stuff in a very short distance right on the street.
Yeah, and it gets crazy. Yeah, in July when they do the conference there, it is absolutely a madhouse.
I don't see how it could have been any more of a madhouse than it was this time. You couldn't even see the sidewalk because of the people. It was nuts.
Yeah, so they usually have about, I think this past year we had about 3,000 to 4,000 people that attended the conference. So you add on top of that on a Saturday another 3,000 or 4,000 people that are coming in for a Bigfoot conference, and it gets wild, man. But it's good time. It's a really good.
I can imagine, because I know I did learn that Pigeon Forge is a semi-dry town, where Gatlinburg is not. So
definitely,
I had to drive to Gatlinburg, and I went into I think it was somebody's house, and we bought some alcohol, and I bought some Buffalo Trace because we cannot get it in Ohio because we can never find it. So somebody's going to get some nice Christmas gifts from me this year.
Hey, Brian, let me ask you. I was thinking that you were from further south, and is that correct? Than that area, or are you from that area?
Born and raised in Georgia.
Okay, that's what I was thinking, that you were down that way, and that when you were a police officer, was it
City
in Atlanta or
City of Atlanta Police? Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That was probably an easy job.
That was totally easy. Do it with your eyes closed. Sometimes I did it with my eyes closed. That's how I got
probably nothing to do during your shift, No,
I mean we average about 3,000 to 3,500 911 calls a day.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
I don't even see how you can do that. Seriously.
It's definitely something, man. I spent 10 years with the City of Atlanta, and it was there was never a dull moment. I mean, that's if you're into that sort of thing and you like the adrenaline and you don't mind getting shot at and getting ran over by people. And I did it all, man. It was good times.
That's crazy. So somehow you went from being a police officer in Atlanta. Now you're in North Carolina. And you're doing this Bigfoot thing. Were you always a Bigfoot guy, or did this something that just kind of come on? Were you on a police run one day and a Bigfoot walked out in front of you and you're like, holy crap, what's that? Now I'm going to go chase Bigfoot, or anything like that? Nothing.
I would have loved that, but no. I grew up in North Georgia, born and raised in the Rome area and the mountains and the foothills of North Georgia. And I grew up with stories about Bigfoot. Okay. I heard those stories as a kid, and I was always interested in it. And then I had an experience when I was 12. Didn't see anything, but I think I was bluff charged by one of these things, possibly ran out of the woods by something huffing and gruffing and what sounded like a bluff charge. So I've always been interested in it. And then, you go into law enforcement, and I've said it so many times, you don't really talk about that, or at least I didn't when I was a police officer, because, people tend to think you're crazy when you talk about Bigfoot, or, I had a UFO experience when I was 16. I saw a UFO when I was with my mom, and you don't talk about that stuff, right? You just go to work, you keep your head down, you do your thing, and go home for the day. So until I hung that up and we left the job in 2016, my better half and I were both cops. That's why I said I don't have a mouse in my pocket.
Okay.
So we both left that in 2016. And then I was able to really get into the Bigfoot thing. I really got into some Bigfoot podcasts, and one Bigfoot podcast, started listening to the People's Encounters, and I was fascinated with it. And then I was hearing people say, that proverbial, there's only one Bigfoot, and that was Patty out in California. There never in our area, right? All the stories that I heard growing up in the southeastern United States, those things don't exist. So I set out to find as many people as I could in the southeastern United States, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Kentucky, in that area, Texas even, to find people that had experiences, and I wanted to talk to them. So that's what I did. I started talking to people and getting into Facebook groups and asking people if they had encounters, and people were responding and saying, yeah, I did. So then I thought, well, I got to document it, right? So I started recording, with their permission, of course. Can I record this interview? And then I just started a podcast. And of course, like most podcasts, there was 5 people listening, and 3 of them were my friends and family.
Yeah.
Yep.
I stuck with it, and it grew into something that I never would have imagined. And I started the podcast. I posted the first episode of Sasquatch Odyssey in February of 2021. And I left my full-time job in March of 2022 to do this full-time.
So, Russ, that tells me that we're doing something absolutely wrong.
Yeah. We don't have enough friends, for one.
Right. And we're not that interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's how it goes.
It is what it is.
It'll happen. It'll happen. Just keep plugging away.
Yeah, everybody says that. Anyway, so you got to do this Bigfoot thing, and the thing that I want to thank you and apologize all in one sentence to you, and you have no idea why. The episode that we're bringing out this week, Russ and I looked at 4 historical Bigfoot encounters. I heard your episode. We had a guest cancel on us kind of last minute, and we had nothing to do. And I said, I heard these guys. Why don't we each pick 2 historical Sasquatch encounters and talk about them? So I picked, I loved the, who's my guy? The prospect.
You're talking about the guy in Pennsylvania?
No.
The creature?
The creature, and I picked
Albert Osman.
Yeah, Albert Osman. So, because you did Albert Osman, you guys did a great job on it. And then Russ picked 2 that were actually pretty good. One was very famous, I heard of, and the other one I never did. So I hadn't heard of it. So I want to thank you for giving me the idea and apologize for stealing Albert Osman from you.
Albert belongs to everybody, man. He belongs.
I love that story. I love that story. So
that's a good story.
So we did that. I listened to that podcast. So, but I think the one prior to that, I can't remember if it was the one prior or after that, you were preparing to go visit one of our great people, Todd Standing. So just by mentioning that name, people are throwing stuff at their radios right now, and I'm sure someone just swerved off the road and hit a telephone pole. I've never met the man. I've seen him do some things on his shows. I don't know him. I know that I think Les Stroud went to his area, correct? So Les Stroud kind of got connected with him. Les Stroud had some things happen. Todd Standing said he's had some things happen. Some pictures that he has released look like very bad Halloween masks. Some of them do not. Some of the video looks compelling. Some of it doesn't.
Jeff Meldrum was there.
Jeff Meldrum was there. So he is this very polarizing figure in the Bigfoot community. But you took it one step further, and you went up and spent a week with him.
That I did.
How did that go?
Well, I tell you, there has to be a little backstory there, I think, before we get into that. Because
absolutely.
The thing that's happening to me now, it's happening in the Coalition for Critical Thinking group on Facebook. I'm in all kinds of turf wars with people over Todd Standing at the moment. But the backstory was I'd called Todd out as a hoaxer forever on my show because I believed that he hoaxed those videos that we're talking about. I don't think the ones that are in the Discovering Bigfoot documentary are real.
Okay.
And I watched that documentary the first time and I was blown away by it. And then the more I watched it and the more I dug into it and the more I looked, I thought, something's just not sitting right with me here. And then I just finally just came to the conclusion that it was all BS, right? I think he hoaxed the videos. So I talked about that and I tried to get Todd on the show to talk about it forever. He eventually came on my show, but he only came on the show after I had Les Stroud on. And Les and I talked about him on the show. And I asked Les point blank, how did your time go there? He talked about some of the experiences that he had. And he said, look, he's a good dude. He's overzealous. Everything's Bigfoot with Todd. But I could not prove that he was hoaxing anything that happened. And I held the SD cards in my hand for those videos that we're talking about. And I couldn't say definitively that he hoaxed the stuff, right? That's very difficult to do. That's a very difficult thing to do. When you start talking about hoaxers, it is almost impossible to prove somebody's hoaxed anything unless it's just completely out there and you can find the mask on eBay or something.
Sure.
Without them admitting it, right? So that's kind of where I was with Todd. And I asked Les, one of the things that really stuck out to me and bothered me was, where's the lead up to any of these things that Todd has purported to be a video of a Sasquatch? And that's exactly what Les said to me on the show. That was his issue. He couldn't figure out where the lead up was. And there's always lead up and there's always stuff that happens after a video is taken. So we were kind of both on the same page. And then after I had Les on, miraculously, Todd reached out shortly after and said, I'll come on the show and talk about it. So we did, had him on the show. He was very honest, open, good dude. I really enjoyed my time with him. He was a personable person, respectful, even though I had called him a hoaxer so many times and we had a decent rapport. And he even said it on the show. Look, I forgive you, dude. No hard feelings, but here's the real deal. Here's the video. And he stuck by his story and he's continued to do that. And invited me out to come up and see for myself in his research area, the very same place that Les Stroud had his experiences. Come on out. I'll take you out and you can make up your mind for yourself.
So for people that haven't heard why there was no lead up, I believe that you're referring to the fact that, he only had so many batteries, with him or whatever he's out in the field. You said he's like, you're, what do you say? Something like 3 hours or something crazy from like anything,
3 hours outside of the Calgary area. I flew into Calgary. We're 3 hours away from Calgary, but just to give the remoteness of the area. And I don't want to really give the area away because that's not mine to do.
Right.
Just imagine driving 3 hours away from a big city and then getting to, now we lost cell signal about 30 miles before we turned off of the actual highway onto the logging road that we did another 27 kilometers into the woods on. So we were roughly 17 and a half, 18 miles back into the middle of the woods. That's where his base camp is.
Okay.
So pretty remote area, right?
Yep.
And, I took it to that point because he laid down the gauntlet basically and said, hey, if you want to see what this is really about, if you don't believe me, come out and experience it for yourself. So I did, and I'm kind of that guy, if I'm really serious about something, and I have the opportunity to do that. I'm not going to sit on the couch, and I could have continued to sit behind the microphone and talk smack about Todd for the rest of my life. But given the opportunity, why would I not take that opportunity and go see for myself if I'm being honest with myself and if I'm being honest about what I'm saying about him? And if I can prove that one way or the other through experiences and spending time with him. Now, he and I had talked after he had been on the show. I let him use a couple of the videos that I had done. My Les Stroud interview and the one I did with Todd himself it's been on his YouTube channel for a couple of years now. So we had conversations and stayed in contact. We were by no means friends after that, but he gave me the opportunity and I took it. And I went up there the first week of October. I was there like October 2nd through the 9th.
So you were up in the middle of nowhere for 7 days, and I've heard you talk about it on your podcast that there's nothing there. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around. Somebody else did go up with you, and he kind of went off on his own. So, but you said that the area that he was in was so far away from where you guys were at. There's absolutely no way that he could hoax anything or do anything. So did you have an experience when you were up there?
You're talking about Jason Shute, and Jason's actually going to come on the show. We've got him scheduled for an interview in the next couple of weeks. So you'll get to hear from Jason himself about his time. He went out and did what they call the Radium Mountain hike. We took him part of the way up there. I have some video and some audio from that I'll eventually put out either on Sasquatch Odyssey or that Bigfoot podcast. Eventually I'll put that out there, but Jason was there to do that himself. He went out for 10 days in the bush by himself. So he was miles away from where we were. We had to drive to the area that he was going to be leaving from. And we walked him about a third of the way into his several hour hike that he had to get to the top of the mountain. And then he was up there by himself for 7 days. So he was miles away from us. So there's been people that have said, oh, this guy just happened to be in the same area and just happened to be going off on his own when you had these experiences. It definitely was not him in the woods doing the things that I experienced. But to answer your question, yes, I did have experiences throughout the week while I was there.
Anything definitive?
Nothing definitive.
Okay.
Nothing definitive. I didn't see anything. Kyle was there, who used to do the Discovering Bigfoot podcast, and his dad, Richard, was there. And Richard said I think the second night there, that he stepped out to go relieve himself at like 3 a.m, saw a shadow in an area 15, 20 feet away from him, kind of stared it down, was pretty sure it was a Sasquatch.
Okay.
And then it moved off. And then we did go down to the area where he described this being. Kyle and I went down there the following day, and we did find 2 huge, what looks like footprints in an area that would have been standing, looking exactly where he was pointing. So again, not definitive, but I heard wood knocks on several occasions and in the middle of the day, and I'm responding with whoops and calls, and I'm getting wood knocks in return. We had a couple of times we'd sit around the fire every night, campfire, just talking. I've been putting out that audio on Sasquatch Odyssey. I've got another one coming out on Friday, I think. But we're sitting around talking, enjoying time around the fire. We're hearing whoops. We're hearing what sounds like samurai chatter, which was really strange. It sounded like it was 30, 40 feet into the wood line. We got a ton of wood knocks. Like I said, we took a night hike one night and went out, I don't know, 600 to 800 yards into the woods on a night hike. Got some wood knocks while we were out there. And I think the thing that really stuck out to me, and I just did this audio, I was editing it today actually, was all the rock throwing that went on. There was one night in particular where we were sitting around and it was right after we did the night hike actually, just probably 2 hours worth of rock throwing. There was something in the wood line throwing rocks and hitting the camper that was 20 feet behind us. And the funny thing about it is people say, well, Todd had somebody out there. There was nobody else out there. And Todd wasn't doing it, nor was Ashley, because they were asleep in the truck when it started. When we started hearing the first rocks hit the camper, because he had told us when he went to bed, if something shakes the camper or something happens, you guys hear something, come wake us up. We want to hear what you're hearing and experience what you're experiencing. So we get the rocks thrown at the camper. Kyle goes and gets Todd Ashley stays in the truck. Todd comes out, and you hear him enter the audio. He's talking to us, and he's literally talking while rocks are being thrown at the camper, and we're all hearing it. It's on the audio. What's that? Something's hitting the camper with rocks. We never saw where it came from. We didn't see what was doing it. So it's not definitive, but it's just a culmination for me of the totality of the circumstances. The tree breaks, very subjective, right? I'm not a tree break guy.
Yeah.
Tons of tree breaks. What looks like, you can see some of the very same footprints that I'm looking at that are in the Discovering Bigfoot documentary. Meldrum was looking at them. Bindrinaga was looking at them. Some of those are still in the moss there 5 years later, right?
Really?
And there's new ones. Yeah. That moss is almost indescribable. I couldn't believe how it holds the shape of whatever had been there before. And it looks like 17, 18-inch Sasquatch tracks to me. Again, the tree structures, the huge tree that we found, if anybody listens to the show, you've seen that, or you've checked out my YouTube, you can see the video of this probably 400-year-old Douglas fir that we found on a random hike. Me, Todd, Ashley, Kyle, Richard, we just go on a random afternoon hike. We end up in an area in the national forest side of where we are, on the other side of where the logging is taking place. We come across this big, huge Douglas fir tree, probably 400 years old. And there's 3 trees that are propped up on it, probably 80 feet each, that they look like they've been picked up off the ground, because there's watermarks on all 3 sides of the tree where it looks like they've been laying, the rot that collects. One side's rot and one side's not. It's been laying on the ground, picked up and put in a triangle. on two sides and then another one on the third side of this tree. And Todd pulls out his compass on his phone. One of them is pointing directly due north. The other one is pointing directly due south. And the other one's kind of like southeast. It really didn't make a whole lot of sense. There's huge tree breaks on either side that are pointing directly at this tree, probably 4-inch saplings that are broken. Estimated they've probably been broken 6 years, maybe or so, pointing directly at this tree. Really weird. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I don't know how that would happen because there was no root balls for these trees. Now, we didn't know that at the time. We were speculating at the time. Todd had his last expedition of the year after I left. I think it was a week after I left. He had two or three guys come in for the last expedition. He did a video that's up on his Sylvanic Bigfoot channel now. They went out there with a shovel and dug down to try to find a root ball for these trees. There's no root ball. These trees were picked up off the ground and propped up onto this tree. Again, it's subjective. It is what it is, but I don't know what else that could be. It wasn't a person. It didn't happen naturally. So you tell me what propped those trees.
No excavator up there, huh?
Definitely not an excavator. The deadfall in that area, and you can see it on the video. We're trying to walk across these trees. There's no freaking way you could drive any equipment. I couldn't get a bobcat back there, much less a big excavator to put these things up, 80-foot tall trees that are probably 1,500 pounds a piece. I don't know. And I don't know how a Sasquatch would do it. I don't know why they would do it. And I'm not saying it was a Sasquatch. I'm just saying when you put all that together over the course of 7 days, I came away feeling like, and I've never said this before, but I came away feeling like I had live interacted with what I believe to be a Sasquatch on a couple of occasions, which is exactly what Todd said would happen when I went up there. Now, of course, there's the flip side of that coin, and a lot of people say, oh, it's all a hoax. You can't believe anything he says, anything that happens. And I've talked about that honestly on the show. I went into the situation having to clear my mind of that because I was so convinced that Todd was so anxious for something to happen while I was there that whatever happened was going to be a hoax. And I literally, the couple of days before I flew out, I had to sort of sit down and go, okay, just clear your mind and be open to the fact that you might have an experience with a Sasquatch while you're there. And it won't be a guy in a suit or somebody he's paid to beat on a tree. And when I did that, I had what I believe to be experiences. When I'm sitting next to Todd and I'm sitting next to the only other people that I know to be in that area, and I'm hearing wood knocks, and I'm hearing what sounds like talking in the woods, and I'm hearing rocks come out of the tree line hitting the camper that's 15 feet away from me, I kind of feel like I'm having an experience. It is an experience. Now, it may not be Sasquatch, but it was an experience. And Todd was sitting next to me talking when I was hearing the talking. There was plenty of times he didn't even hear it because he was talking. And I go back on the audio and you can hear sounds like samurai chatter 30 feet behind us. So I don't know how you explain that.
Okay.
So in full disclosure, in the past, when I've been a guest on quite a few shows, I have been critical of Todd's videos, the ones that we were talking about earlier, which people can go to YouTube and look up Todd Standing Bigfoot, and there you'll be able to see the videos that are on there. I have talked to Todd many times via text or messenger, and he had been trying to get me to go up there, and he was in Ohio one time. We were going to try to meet up and talk face to face. And I have talked to Ashley a little bit as well. And I find them very nice. And, I've enjoyed the conversations I've had with them. I'm wondering, because I think that it's fair to say the great majority of the people that are serious into Bigfoot researchers do not believe the videos. I do believe that where Todd is, that I believe that he's getting action, but I believe that the videos probably poisoned him for a lot of people. So what do you believe that Todd could do to restore his credibility in the Bigfoot field?
Russ, outside of dragging a Bigfoot into town tomorrow, either live or dead, I don't think there's anything he can do. Because here's the problem, and I get it with people, right? I'm very cynical when it comes to that stuff. 16 years in law enforcement hardens most people just in general about people. You just become a cynic of people. I've tried to get away from that in my old age and try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I use this example on the show. We did a live show on that Bigfoot podcast a couple of weeks ago. I said, look, my grandmother was murdered when I was a kid, right? And the guy who killed her spent 7 years in prison, and he got out.
Wow, that's nothing.
And he was living his life. Now, he died of cancer shortly after. Karma's a bitch, right? But he spent 7 years in prison for murdering my grandmother. And Todd Standing faked some Bigfoot videos 13 years ago, and he's still in frickin' Bigfoot jail. And it seems like people have a really, really long elephant type memory when it comes to hoaxing. And I get it. I hate hoaxers. I hate hoaxing anything. I have called plenty of hoaxers out. I've called Sasquatch Ontario out. I've gotten into all kinds of pissing matches with people that I know to be hoaxers. I don't like it. But at some point in time, if your brand is nothing but a hoax, I get it, right? There's people who put hoaxed videos out and hoaxed pictures, and that's all they do. It's their full-time job. They hoax stuff and then they put it out and they claim it's real. The issue I have with people not giving Todd any type of a fair shake is he is doing research. He is in the woods. They are out there more than anybody I know. I would put it up against anybody. I'd love for somebody to come and tell me that there's somebody on earth that spends more time in the woods in an area that if I were a Sasquatch, I would live there. It's just that simple. That's the radium area. If I were a Bigfoot, if they exist, I guarantee you they are in that area. That's where I would be. So he's in an area where I believe he's having experiences. I've had experiences that I believe to be with a Sasquatch. And he's documenting. He's using a thermal drone. He spent 10 grand on a thermal drone that he uses in research. They're going out and trying different things to collect evidence. And yet, because he faked the videos, I believe, I can't prove that. So I'll say, in my opinion, the videos are hoaxed. People just won't let it go. And I get it. Again, he made the bed. That's what I get all the time. It's his fault. He made the bed. He's got to lie in it. And okay. And really all I've said is, and I've caught a lot of flack since I got back and just said, basically the only thing that changed about my opinion before I took the trip and now is I said before the trip, I think he hoaxed the videos and I think he's probably having real experiences with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I spend a week there. I come back and say, I think he hoaxed his videos. I think he's had experiences with Bigfoot. I kind of like the dude. And I think I had my own experiences while I was there.
I think that
just lost it. I don't understand it.
When you hoax in Bigfoot, it's equivalent to betting in baseball. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of the death penalty.
Rose of Bigfoot.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. I mean, he's Pete Rose of Bigfoot. He was not well known until this happened. He came out of nowhere. It's what got him around. Some of the people that aren't in the Bigfoot community that don't know. I have people all the time, maybe that I went to high school or undergraduate with, will say, hey, have you seen these videos? Are these real? They're pretty impressive, that type of thing. But I think that one of the things that, if I was him, that concerns me a little bit, and I know that I am not the keeper of the flesh and blood flame, but I know that, and I've heard you talk about it and other people talk about it as well, that he's evolving into something, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he believes that there's some mind speak going on, that he can communicate with the Bigfoot. I know that there is other people out there. For the life of me, I don't understand why this just happened in the last 5 years. I mean, 20 years ago, there was nobody but Todd Standing Tom Powell in the whole country that was interested in anything that was wooish. The word wasn't even around then. It didn't even exist. But all of a sudden now, out of nowhere, and everybody knows, I think it's largely because our woods are filled with Bigfooters that are not woodsmen, that don't spend time in the woods. They're not hunters. They don't understand the woods. They're just, day trippers. And so I worry that his transcendence into the woo, being more open-minded about that type of thing, is going to further alienate him in the community. I mean, did you guys talk about that, the mind speak type thing? Am I being correct? I mean, I know that you can't speak for Todd, and I'm not asking you to. I guess I'm just saying, am I off base there?
No, you are definitely 100% on. And I was talking about this before I took the trip, and I honestly, my take on it was, he started that on my show. We talked a little bit about it when he was a guest on the show. And I said, when I got off there, my honest opinion was he's moving into that because that's even harder to prove. That's easier to hoax and harder to prove, right? Yeah. He's hoaxed the videos. People said, oh, those are fake. It's harder to, how do you disprove that somebody says a Sasquatch spoke to me in my mind? You can't disprove that, right? You can't prove that as a hoax. So I said, he's moving into that because it's easier to hoax that. And full disclosure, when I went up there, Todd immediately, that was one of the first things that he talked about. I literally got off the plane. We went to his house. We're standing in his kitchen, and he starts talking about mind speak with Bigfoot. And I'm, here we go. Right. So that happens. We get out into the woods, and it just progresses from there. You can listen to the audio. I mean, I've got hours of audio of sitting around the fire listening to him talk about this stuff. But here's the thing I will say about it. I'm not picking up what he's putting down. I didn't experience any mind speak with Bigfoot. I'm not so sure that that's a thing, but I'm not going to totally discredit it because it could be. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I'll just put that out there for the record. But I can tell you one thing that I did come away after spending a week there. I changed my tune on the fact that he's doing it because it's a gimmick. I didn't get that at all. If you spend time with him and Ashley, they are serious about what they believe is happening. Their connection telepathically with these creatures to them is a very real thing. So they're either completely psychotic or something else is going on there. That's the only thing I can make out of it, but it's not a gimmick for him. I can tell you that, at least in my opinion. I could be he could have snowballed me, but it didn't look like a gimmick to me. I believe that they believe that that's going on and happening for them. So I don't know.
Let me just say that if Bigfoot can mind speak and indeed can communicate telepathically, it is not a flesh and blood animal. It would be something else. It would be alien related or something. And I'm just saying that we don't have any examples of that anthropologically in the world, in our history. There's nothing like that out there. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know how we attach that. It's just, I'm not even sure what to say about it. I mean,
but you're right about this. It is. I do believe in a lot of ways it's going to further alienate him even farther. He's going to be ostracized even more so by the rest of the community that might have even thought about giving him any kind of a shake whatsoever. But I don't think he cares.
No, he likes being polarizing.
He doesn't care at all. He could care less about what people think about him. He does his thing and he's unapologetic. And I think that's the other thing that's been key for me. It's less about the evidence that's happening. It's less about the experiences that I've brought back from that. People are polarized by his personality. He's kind of full of himself, right? There's some narcissistic traits going on there. He's a politician at heart. So he thinks highly of himself, but everybody's like, he's a Jim Jones, right? He's a cult leader. He's a wannabe cult leader. And I guess on some level, he probably is. I mean, he's very cultish about his Bigfoot stuff. That is his life. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He lives and breathes Bigfoot. So in a way, I guess it is his cult, his religion. So again, it's a personality thing for most people. And I think that coupled with the hoaxing, he just doesn't stand a chance, and I kind of feel bad for the guy, but again, if he hoaxed the videos, then he put himself in that position. All I've said is my experiences with him have been okay. He brought me into his home. He fed me. He treated me with respect. He kept me safe for 7 days in the middle of the backcountry. He showed me some beautiful places and I had some amazing experiences. And that's what I walked away with. And I've been perfectly honest about that. But people really did want me to come back and just bash him and talk about how horrible he is and this, that, or the other. And I'm just not going to do that.
I think that's one of the ironic things is, and I was telling this to Brad earlier, is that, so you're this cop, you're in Atlanta, you move up to the mountains, you are not really a Bigfooter, you just have an interest and you start interviewing people and it evolves. And you're interviewing researchers, you're interviewing people who have these Bigfoot encounters. And all of a sudden you come back and Brian is the story. You know what I mean? Like somehow or another, you became the story after you became back, as opposed to what you normally do. And I thought, gosh, how ironic, is that now you're, I mean, I know you're talking about some of the people like the coalition guys that are on the internet, and heaven knows I've had my own battles with them and have decided not to fight those battles any longer. But, have they made you feel defensive? Meaning the internet people in general, not that group specifically, because they're just kind of a bunch of little whiny losers. But
outside of them, not really. I mean, I've had a couple of people that have, here and there, I'll get emails and saying, I just can't believe that, you would even give Todd. I think that's the other thing that people don't like. That, I have a few people that listen to my show. It's kind of popular. So I'm giving a platform to this kind of stuff, I guess, is the way people have seen it with Todd. And I guess on some level, I get that. But I think as long as it's done in an honest way, I'm not endorsing anything Todd does. I'm just being honest and open about it. And yeah, I mean, I am human. I tell people that a lot. I try not to read the comments, but when you do read the comments and it gets a little crazy, then I am human. So it does bother me because people, that's the thing, I saw it again. It's the coalition thing, but I mean, people posting videos, pictures of a teddy bear saying, this fooled a former cop because Todd's, it's just that kind of stuff. The personal attacks bother me because I try to keep it about the facts. And as long as I think I talk about the facts and keep it to the facts, I really don't care what anybody else thinks, because I know I go to bed at the end of the day knowing and feeling good about what I'm putting out there. But it has been tough being the story because I'm not used to that. I literally, every interview I do, before I came on the show, I turn the mic on and I tell the people I'm about to talk to, people tune into the show to hear you. I'm going to mute my mic and this is all about you. Yeah. So it's been difficult for me, but I've been the story before. I was used to that. And some of the assignments I had as a police officer, I did a lot of public speaking, a lot of training. So I'm okay with it, but I'd rather it be about the research and about the facts.
All right. So on that note, you've been doing this for a while, and I know Sasquatch Odyssey, you get a lot of reports, and I think you have people come on there and they talk about their reports. Do you have a favorite? Do you have one that's just like, Rick, man, if I wish I was there for that one, or I wish I wasn't there for that one?
I think one that sticks out from recently, it's probably 6 or 8 months ago. And it's actually somebody that I referred to Doug, and I think he might actually end up being in the Legend Meet Science too. I think they might do some regression on him to maybe pull out some more details. I could be wrong, but it was a hunter who was hunting for elk, he and his dad, and they were in an area. They separated. They both had a tag, so they separated to go into their respective areas to hunt. It was a really long, drawn-out story. I mean, it was about an hour and 15 minutes just for him to get to his encounter, because he kept hearing these wood knocks. And I think the name of I can't remember the name of the episode. I'm horrible with that. In a nutshell, this guy felt like he was being lured in by a Sasquatch doing wood knocks to do something nefarious to him, because this thing was doing wood knocks. He would walk. It would only knock when he stopped. He would knock. He would go in the direction of the knock because he was curious, stop, knock again. Ended up culminating into this huge Sasquatch stepped out from behind a tree 20 feet away from him. Dude's got a rifle in his hand, and he thought about shooting it. And then he thought, my gun's not big enough. Right. And he backed out. And it sounds like a simple story out of all the ones I've documented, but you'd have to hear the entirety of the story and understand that that's the first time I've ever heard anybody. And of course it's subjective. He has no idea. It's anecdotal, right? It's his experience. He has no idea that this thing was luring him in, but to feel that, or for him to have that feeling. And then, it really messed him up for a while. I mean, he turned to drinking. And the thing that bothered him the most about it afterwards is he didn't go and tell his dad. He sat in the truck. That was the first day of their 7-day trip. He sat in the truck every day when his dad thought he was out hunting, and he let his dad go out by himself in the woods. And he said, Dad ate me up, because he didn't know how to tell his dad what he had saw. He eventually told him, but that really ate him up inside, that he's like, I sent my dad out because I was just scared and I didn't know what to say. So I don't know. Wow. It's just one of those that stuck with me. There's been some wild ones that have, stuck with me that are kind of comical over the years, but that one was really compelling, I think. And it stuck with me for sure.
One of the things I was curious about, and I started, I get interested in topics, and here last month I was working on infrasound all month. And then, after I spend, it may be 20 hours, it may be 40 hours, whatever it takes to get where I feel like I know the subject well, then I'll write something. And that's how I did the second book. And I'm not saying I'm getting ready to do another book, but I've been researching topics again. And one of the things I'm curious about is manifestation from a scientific standpoint, on whether or not it's possible for us to provoke something in the woods, like a wood knock, a sound. Can we make it so that our brains believe it, so that the stories that we are hearing from people, that they 100% believe that something's happening, but in reality it's not. I think that we need to do a deep dive inside Bigfoot on exactly what our witnesses are looking at from that perspective, more of a, not only a physiological, because I know with some of the infrasound stuff and the people getting zapped, that I thought that there was a component to that as well. But, we've had some people on that Brad and I found pretty compelling. But I'm curious about that manifestation. Have you ever thought about, when you were in the woods, that it was possible, or listening to some of the witnesses, that you thought that they were sincere, but what they were telling you, just, you wouldn't know how they would get that to that point?
Yeah, I absolutely know what you mean. And I've thought that multiple occasions. And I too have started looking into some of that stuff, because there has to be a little bit of that, I think, that goes on. I don't think every single time that people have some of the experiences they think they happen exactly like they think. And I can look, we do it just like we're doing now. We're looking into the eyes of the person who's telling their story. And I got a pretty good BS meter, and I can usually tell when somebody's BSing me. And that happens very rarely. It happened this afternoon before I got on with you guys, I think, for the first time in a long time. But I know it almost immediately when somebody's telling me a story. But when you see that in people's eyes and they're going back to what they're experiencing, and even then, there's a little bit of that in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, could they have manifested that? I thought about myself. Did I manifest any of the things that happened to me, or that I perceived happened to me in the woods in Canada? I don't think so, but it's possible. I think the mind is a very, very powerful thing. I was talking about that recently with some people. Wayne and I did a show on woo, or high strangeness, on that Bigfoot podcast the other day, and we were talking about, Dr. John Baranchuk is going through cancer, and he shared some stuff with Wayne about how he believes, after having a conversation with Janice Carter of all people, that Sasquatch is going to somehow be involved in healing his cancer. And I told Wayne, I don't necessarily believe Sasquatch have that ability, but here's the thing. The mind is a powerful thing. My mom was supposed to die of cancer 30 years ago. They gave her 3 months to live 30 years ago, and she's still kicking because she refuses to die. It's just a mental thing, right? So my answer to that for Wayne was, I'm not sure that Bigfoot's going to save John, but if John is convinced that that's a possibility and he believes that wholeheartedly, maybe something will happen for him, And I said all that because he gave us permission, obviously, to talk about that, or I wouldn't be talking about it. So I think the mind is a powerful thing in a many, many different ways. So I think it can certainly, you get in a situation and you hear something, or you can even manifest things and maybe hear things that aren't necessarily happening, and possibly even see them. So I too am working on a book. I hope to have my book done by the end of this month.
Oh, I didn't have any idea. That's awesome, man.
So yeah, and that's not really something I've included in the book, but I've thought about it in a couple of the chapters, because I go into, some of the things mentally that cause people to do some of the things that they do, what causes people to be influenced by some of the things they see in social media and other things that can influence what happens to you, or what you perceive happens to you in the woods when you're having an encounter. So, but that's a very good point. That may be something that I think we do need to look further into, because I think it does go on a lot more than we want to admit.
I think, aside from if there's such a thing as if it's possible that we can manifest something, is the fact that people have something happen, or an interaction they believe to be Bigfoot related, and then everything becomes Bigfoot related. They lose the ability to differentiate things, and you just hear that all the time. you'll get a good witness and everything's really good. And then they just keep talking. The more they talk, and you're like, just stop the story. Stop the story. Don't tell me this stuff. I don't want to hear this stuff. I don't want to hear this stuff.
Yep. It happens to me quite often. And I think that's probably what happens. I think a lot of times people do have real encounters that just blossom into, I think that's where how a lot of hoaxes are born. You know, I think that's what happened with Todd. I think he was having real experiences. He wanted to prove these things were real. He just wasn't getting it done. And that just pushes people to the next level. Oh, if I put this out there, maybe people will believe. Oh, that didn't work. So I got to put this out there. Maybe people will believe. And then before you know it, you're back baby into a corner that you're not getting out of. Unfortunately,
I think we have to. I was telling my friend Ontario Richardson in Iowa, her and I were talking about last week. I mean, we just need to take a pause many times when we're considering, you know, like say we're in a certain state or a certain area and we have a certain amount of acreage. We know an animal the size of Bigfoot, and, you know, they're probably not alone. Maybe they have the family group with maybe the mother and, you know, a juvenile or two, maybe, and then an adult male that maybe is coming in and out over the course of time or whatever it happens to be. But, you know, you start thinking about, you can Google in your area how many deer need, like in Ohio, it's around 40 square acres or something the deer would live on, and a bear is this many acres or whatever it happens. Well, then you can figure out, if you can know that a deer needs that much, you can get an idea of what a predator would need, you know, how much calories, how much carrying capacity the land is provoking. And then you can get an idea of how much room that you would need for a Bigfoot. So a lot of times when you hear something like, oh, Uncle Joe has this 100 acres or whatever, I mean, you're talking about an animal that needs hundreds of thousands of acres. It needs vast territories, you know, hundreds of square miles probably. I mean, I think that a lot of us believe that they're staying closer than what we originally believed. But, you know, there's just not enough food if it's not there. So out west, I know Dr. Melderman said it was like 500, maybe 1,000 square miles is what he used to say. I'm not sure what it is now. But they don't have as much food as we do on the East Coast, especially North Georgia, where you grew up with, you know, which is really one of the rainforests of this part of the country. And there, the deer, the bear, and everything else are much less area that they need to be able to provide. But I think we need to look harder at that area too when people are giving, you know, but it's like the witnesses want to have, they saw a Bigfoot, they think it's staying in their yard or whatever it's staying in. And you start stepping back and thinking, you know, this is a big freaking animal. And it, you know what I mean? It weighs 600 pounds. And, you know, you're just talking about the male. And I'm just, you know, just so everybody knows, I'm choosing 600 pounds at random. I'm not saying they're not 1,000. I'm not saying they're not 200. I'm just choosing that number. But if you're 600 pounds, you need a certain amount of calories, you know, in order to exist. So I wish that sometimes, I don't know how to do it. You know, we all take the stories, we all listen to them, and heaven knows I've listened to a lot of them and written a lot of them down, over 1,000 now. And I wish that we had a way to put those people with, you know, scientists, some type of cultural anthropologists and those type of things, and put it as a group. But the reality is, until the Bigfoot's accepted or acknowledged, I should say, you know, there's just not going to be the funding for us to be able to do that, to look at the topic from a broad spectrum and be able to figure all that stuff out. I see it and I'm interested in it, but, you know, I mean, tomorrow I'm getting up and seeing patients, and you're doing what you're doing, and Brad's putting fiber somewhere and bossing guys around, and, you know, none of us have the time for it.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think about Todd being up there too, and I worry. I remember I was telling Matt Pruitt, I'm like, Matt, you know, you were with BFRO, then you're with he was with the guys out west there, the Bigfoot ape guys. And I'm like, there's a danger when you're just a guy that you're out there by yourself and you're just running it by your buddies. Like, I may ask Brad something, or our friend Sip or friend Darren something, and talk to them about it. But a lot of times I'm forming opinions just based on my personal experience, and they could be wrong. And Todd's doing the same thing. You know, he's with Ashley out there, but they're forming opinions based on their experiences. And sometimes if we don't have somebody else that's opposite our stance, or, you know, maybe they're more flesh-based or more skeptical or whatever, you know, sometimes I think it's easy to start down a path and then see all these things support our belief, rather than, you know, it should be science-based.
I agree.
Forgive me, everybody. I'm rambling on about that tonight. I'm philosophical about, because Brian was on, how can we transition from getting more out of these stories and, helping us along our path?
Well, all good things must come to an end. We're getting to that time. Brian, literally that hour flew by. I didn't yawn one time.
That's something in itself.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh, yeah. Because I think it was last week. I think you and I both, Russ, I don't know what we did over the weekend, but all I know is, man, I was tired. We do these at night, and, we're trying not to get too late, but we're getting older. And, I saw something the other day is, 50 is the new 40, and, 9 o'clock's the new midnight or something. You know what I mean? As we get older, we like to go to bed earlier because we get tired. I do enjoy listening to your podcast. You got a great voice for this. You keep it interesting. It's not one of those that you don't know how many podcasts we've done where, or you go start a podcast and it's just awful. You're just trying to fast forward, and then you're just like, screw this. I can't even put up with this. So yours is not like that by any way, shape, or form. Tell us where we can find you. What is it? How can everybody, how can they get with what you're doing and hear some of your great stories?
Sasquatch Odyssey, you can hear it anywhere you get your podcast. I also have a YouTube channel, Sasquatch Odyssey Podcast on YouTube. Got tons of stuff over there. Not as much. I mean, we're 380 some odd episodes into Sasquatch Odyssey on the audio podcast side. You can get it Apple Podcast, Spotify, anywhere you can find it.
Is that a weekly thing, or do you do it multiple times a week, or how do you do that?
Yeah, every Friday there's guaranteed a show. I've been doing bonus shows since I've been doing it full time. Sometimes I do 3 a week. So there's lots of stuff to listen to. And that Bigfoot podcast, Wayne and I just started that. It is not encounters based. It is all about the stuff that pisses us off in Bigfoot. It's all about hoaxers. It's all about, we're doing some live shows coming up over the next couple of weeks. I don't know when this will air, but you can check out, we'll do those on the Sasquatch Odyssey YouTube channel, but you can get that anywhere you get audio podcasts. And I also do the Weird Encounter show here on Untold Radio, and I have a true crime podcast. I do a true crime podcast called True Crime Odyssey as well. So I'm about 50 some odd episodes into the true crime show.
What do you cover with true crime on your true crime podcast? Some of those I try to listen to, and I listened to some of those about like some serial killers for a while, and that just really you got to the point where I can't hear this anymore. This is just, people are demonic in this world at some point, and there's just these people that are around that you've never heard about, and they killed 30 people in Minnesota, and he was a pig farmer, and just like, where'd these people come from? I mean, this is awful.
It's scary, man. I've done all kinds of shows. I've started early on. I did a 6-part series on the Atlanta child murders. Obviously, I lived through that when I was a kid. I policed in Atlanta. I've done a couple of Atlanta-based ones. I've done I can't even think of the one. It's escaping me. There was a big case when I was a kid, the Corpsewood murders in North Georgia. I did a show about that. I cover a little bit of everything. I don't do just the horrible serial killer stuff. I do some of that stuff, but I try to do I don't know if it's mild true crime. I don't know.
Well, I'll have to check that out, because you're right. I can imagine being a police officer, some of the stuff that you saw. It's I'm surprised you can sleep at night, people that do that. So I've got a lot of respect for them. I probably wouldn't last a long time. I'd probably shoot the first guy that, whatever, how that works. I'd probably be in prison right now. Russ, you got anything left for Brian?
Hey, Brian, thanks so much. It's good to see you, my friend.
You too. I appreciate it.
Catch you next time around.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm gonna put on my calendar for the what was the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot conference, or what was that? And maybe if you're gonna be there, I'll run into you down there, because that was fun. I'll drag the wife down there. She would begrudgingly go to that one with me, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a good time, man.
Brian's legitimately one of the good guys in the Bigfoot field, and everybody thinks a lot of them likes him, and we appreciate you making time, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, Brian. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, bye. All right, sir.
Well, you just got to go to Todd Standing. You're going to have to go up there and,
have a thermal drone wreck into a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
why not chase it through the woods?
Yeah, I have a feeling that I'm hoping that in this next year, our lives will look a little bit differently, and maybe we'll get to spend more time doing all this and getting more serious about it. I know you and I talked one time, we're just going to try to spend one more hour a week, and man, the days fill in and it gets hard to
yeah, I know. I got up at 6 a.m. this morning, and literally I was coming down to you, and it seems like I hadn't stopped the entire day. And I don't even know how that happens, to be honest with you. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah. Like, subscribe.
Yep.
The BigfootDoc.com.
Yep. Facebook, Untold Radio Network. Get us everywhere that you can. Other than that, I think we're good.
We appreciate everybody for listening, and until next time, my friend.
And another week has gone by, and Michigan still has a football team. So hopefully that changes in the near future.
Michigan cheated.
Michigan cheated.
Thanks, everyone.
Later.